Hello and welcome back to episode 8 of Pirated Radio. In this episode, I speak to a gentleman by the name of Ian Paget. And for a little bit of background on our chat, this podcast originally was started on the back of a university essay about sort of design in the modern age and how people can sometimes sort of make a living designing content around design, a lot like I'm doing now. Not that I make any money from doing this, but you know, people doing YouTube videos and sort of Twitch streams and things like that. It was kind of a bit of an essay on that kind of world. And I reached out to Ian to ask him about it, as he runs his own podcast called the Logo Geek Podcast. And he has his own community on Facebook, which he goes into in the podcast in further. But I reached out to him to ask him about sort of the design industry, and he invited me for a chat. And we did one. It's on YouTube somewhere. It's sort of privated somewhere. It's not actually out there. And I used that for my essay. He was credited as a source and things like that. So I wanted to eventually get him back on to actually have him on a podcast now that I sort of started the podcast off of the back of that discussion with him. So yeah, this is us talking for the second time. So yeah, that's why I speak to Ian in this. And we talk about a few different things. He goes into kind of detail about process, which I think will be really helpful for people sort of still in university that are looking at maybe doing logo design as a career. This is coming from someone who has done it for a number of years, and he sort of goes over his process of thinking from sort of start to finish and sort of presentation and all different things. We also talk about kind of what a logo is used for, and sort of AI technology and how that's sort of on the rise in the logo community, and how you can kind of click a button now and instantly have a logo generated for yourself, and whether that will be sort of the norm going forward, I guess. And we sort of touch on that quite a lot. But yeah, I hope you enjoy. It's a bit of a long one again. Sorry about that. Or if you do like longer ones, you're welcome. I don't know. But yeah, enjoy. George, can you press play on the thingy? No, you're not having a bigger part anymore. I'm just telling you to press play. Just press play. No, I just can't think of any ideas to use with the... Yeah. Hello.
Hey Brian, how's it going?
I'm good, man. Are you?
Yeah, really good. It's the first time I've used this setup in my new office. So I'm just... I moved everything around yesterday, so I'm just kind of adjusting everything. So if you can bear with me. But yeah, how are things with you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm pretty well. How's life treating yourself?
Yeah, good. We've gone through quite a lot of changes over the last couple of months because we relocated. So we moved from just outside of Manchester right up to the Scottish border. So we actually live in Scotland now. So I've needed to make, it's one of the reasons why my podcast isn't back yet. I'm working on new episodes at the moment. It's because there was so much going on. I'm working on an episode to share what's been going on, but yeah, it's been pretty hectic, and yeah, like I said, it's my first episode or first podcast in like 4 or 5 months, so hopefully I'm not too rusty. But yeah, how are things with you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Yeah, still just cracking on my uni course. We're in between years at the moment. Just been working on the podcast. Working on what have I been doing? Just uni course and the podcast, really. Other than that,
yeah,
not a lot, to be honest with you. Watching football at the moment.
Keeping yourself busy, that's the important thing.
yeah, that's always too bad.
How's your podcast going?
It's all right, yeah. And I'm kind of still feeling things out, definitely. I don't think I've hit where I want to be with it in terms of my hosting or anything, as you know, things like that yet. But it's cracking along. It's getting there slowly. I've been touching to, I've had different touch points with different people and things like that, and I think I've done a couple so far, which have been quite nice.
Yeah, because I remember when we last spoke, you started to speak about it, and I was thinking, yeah, you'd be a really good podcast host. So I'm not sure how you're finding it, but in my case, it took me a while to get into it. So like if you listen back to like my first few episodes, I don't even recognize myself now. It's so rusty, so over edited. The quality is awful. I'm using the mic incorrectly. It's so obvious that I'm really nervous and uncomfortable doing it because I sound very robotic and quite stiff. Yeah, you seem quite natural and quite comfortable doing this from the outset. And I think as you do it more, you just get more comfortable. So just keep doing it, and you get better at interviewing. You get more comfortable. Your audience grows, and I think people like to watch that progress.
Yeah, I think my thing has been kind of I do get a bit nervous prior to them, but as soon as I start talking to them, I kind of ooze out, so to speak, and things like that.
I'm the same. I always get nervous. I get nervous. Like I was getting a bit nervous doing this. I always do.
No, that's fair. I think nerves are good in a good way, aren't they? I suppose it shows that you're kind of on your A game, I guess, so to speak. But anyway, let's actually begin. So I guess first of all, for the people that are listening that don't have the pleasure of knowing yourself, can you give them a bit of an introduction to yourself and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name's Ian, and I've been a graphic designer now for maybe 15 years. It's been quite some time. But what most people know me for is something that started out as a side project whilst working at a web design agency, and that's designing logos. And I created a website just as a hobby called Logo Geek. But along with that, over time, I've built it up. It's become bigger and bigger and bigger. And here today, it's now my full-time venture. So I spend my day designing logos. I have a community for logo designers. I have a podcast for logo designers, and it's my complete focus now. I'm able to dedicate all my day to logo design, but I've got a whole plan to build a whole load of resources and stuff to help logo designers make a living designing logos.
Just off the back of that, have you thought about doing kind of YouTube and things like that?
I have, yes. So I mentioned, I don't know if you're going to include it in there, but just before we started this conversation, I mentioned that we've recently relocated. And along with that move, we've also moved into a bigger place. And this house, I have a whole dedicated room to myself. And I've set up with all soundproofing, and I've got lights, and I've got a nice fancy I've got all the kit to do it now. So at some point, yeah, I probably will start to do that. It's not my priority right now, but it's on my radar. A few years ago, I definitely wouldn't have been comfortable doing anything like that. But now I think I am. I think I'm okay to do that type of thing. I've got all the setup. So yes, at some point there will be a Logo Geek YouTube or video or something.
Well, I look forward to it. I think you'd be really good at doing sort of YouTube stuff. I mean, you naturally kind of do this, and this kind of podcast field, you naturally kind of fit into it anyway. And I think once you've got a really good hold on this, and it seems like you do, it seems as if you'd just be able to kind of transition that. I guess it'd just be being on camera would be a bit of a kind of learning curve, like as you mentioned.
No,
the learning curve.
I do a lot of Zoom calls, and I feel quite comfortable on them. But it's one of the things that you find when you build your own business is that you have to make money. And there's a lot of exciting things that I would absolutely love to do, but the reality is that they don't make money there and then. So like when a client comes to you, how I do mine is it's 50% upfront, 50% at the end. So it's pretty much guaranteed income. Yeah, you're trading time for money, but it's predictable income. You know, you can say, okay, this month I've made this much money. I'm predicted to make this much money next month, and so on. But like with a podcast or a YouTube channel or a blog or any kind of content creation, unless you're lucky enough to have a sponsor, which I have done in the past, I don't have right now. You're basically just spending a whole lot of time doing a whole load of stuff that makes you no money right away. So you kind of have to find this balance. It's why I said it's not my priority right now, because I've just moved. My car broke down last weekend. I need a new car. It's just, in terms of my life, sitting down and creating video content just isn't my priority right now. It's on my radar, definitely, but I just have to focus on the things that are generating an income. Obviously, I want to keep doing stuff that helps to build a reputation, and this podcast we're doing now, that helps with that. Same with posting on social media. But yeah, creating video, I'll do it at some point.
You mentioned kind of your generating income and things like that. One of the questions that I wanted to kind of ask yourself is, do you have, and this might be a big jump from one to the other, but when you begin a project, do you have sort of a set of steps that you go along to kind of your process, so to speak?
Yeah. So with my logo design projects, I specifically say that because I do other things alongside logo design. But with logo design specifically, I've designed it as a productized business. So what I mean by that is that every single step of the entire process has been designed. It's very formulaic. I have documents and processes for every single step. So, for example, from the moment the client gets in touch, I have a pre-written email that I can copy, paste, edit, send. And that's very quick. When we have the telephone call, I have a planned out script of what I say, and I say the same thing every time, pretty much. And then once they do go through, I have documents that I send over to the client. The contract's got a questionnaire. That's all the same. The only thing that isn't quite as systematized as that is the actual design step-by-step process to finish it. But once I've created the logos, that's when I have template documents, I have emails at every single step of the process. And what that does is I know pretty much exactly how long things will take. I don't need to think too much when a client gets in touch. Everything is very linear, it's all planned out, and it just means that I can pretty much knock through projects in like 2-3 days. And that's only because I've got everything pre-prepared. When I go outside of that model, which I do quite frequently, so say if somebody wants a bespoke website design, I have to kind of do bespoke contracts, and there's more conversations. I don't have documents for any of it, so it's all a whole load more work. So long term, I probably focus more on doing productized services. I realized that didn't exactly answer your question, so let's run through the process. So how I work on a logo design. So step one, client gets in touch. What I usually do from that initial inquiry is just literally ask them, I usually say something like, I'm really excited about this project. Can we arrange a call to discuss it further? That allows me to explain how I usually work to the client and gain that trust, which I think is quite important, especially with logo design, because there's so many people doing this out there. You are being compared with like the Fivers of this world and these $60 services and these AI generators and stuff like that. So if someone was just to ask for a price, I would never just reply a price. I would always want to have that conversation. If they don't want to have that conversation, then I won't work with them. I feel that's quite important. So we have the call. If they want to go ahead, what I then do is I send over a proposal document. I send over a questionnaire. They fill out that questionnaire. That comes back to me. And then what I do is I turn their responses into a list of goals. And that's kind of like a brief. I like to call it goals because I treat it like a tick list of criteria that we need to fulfill. Because a logo is not just a pretty picture, it's a functional, it's a functional strategic tool. So you want to make sure that you fulfill certain criteria. So you want to make sure that you know as much as you can about the business, who they are, what they do. You want to know who they compete with, so you can differentiate them from the competition. And you also want to know who they are planning to target, so that you can use certain aesthetics to attract that type of person. So that those goals, which I said, it's just like a bullet pointed list. I get the client to sign it off, and then if there's anyone else involved in the that's going to be involved in the process at any point, I make sure that they all sign it off. And I make that very clear to my client, because the risk that you can have is, say, if a third party comes in at a later date after you presented the stuff and starts like saying, "Yeah, this wasn't what I wanted." You have proof of what you're aiming to achieve. So in that scenario, when that person does decide to come in, you have the grounds to say, this isn't what we're working towards. If we do want to do that, it means changing the goals and going back to the drawing board. So there's going to be a cost involved in that. So that just keeps you in control from the outset. Client knows what you're aiming to do. You know what you're aiming to do. Anyone else that has any input, there's criteria that you're aiming to fulfill. And that just, like I said, it keeps you in control. It gives you a ground to say no at a later date. And then once that's done, what I then do is I start to find a solution for that. So what that involves is lots of paper and pencils and anything else that I can find on my desk. So sometimes it's pens, all sorts of stuff. I will sketch out ideas, and I'm like I said, what I'm trying to do is find what I feel is the most appropriate solution. I've got lots of idea generation techniques that I can talk through if maybe a later date, because I'm conscious that we're quite far into this already. So like I said, I'll sketch out loads of ideas on paper, and then what I'll do is I take a highlighter pen and narrow it down to a handful of the strongest solutions. So I'll keep exploring all possibilities of where I think it can go. And like I said, I'll just use a pen and highlight the most appropriate. They can sometimes be quite rough. It's just a case of just getting the raw idea there. And then what I'll do is I'll jump into Adobe Illustrator. So for anyone that's listening that might not be familiar with this, Adobe Illustrator is a vector editor. And for logo design, you want to make sure that you're designing with vectors, because it's infinitely scalable. So if you was to create a logo in something like Photoshop, it's made of pixels. So when you scale it up, you start to see all the little squares. But when you work in vectors, you don't see that, because it's you can scale it to the size of a jumbo jet, and it's going to be super sharp. So in Illustrator, I usually take a photo of my sketches. I'll send it over to my computer, and then I'll start to explore that idea further. And in the computer, what I'm trying to do is take the idea and then find the best execution of it. So usually what I'll do is just base it on the sketch. I'll do a rough version, and that's just to make sure that it works. Like if you can make something work in a really rough format, like if you can see it has potential, then keep going with it. But sometimes it just doesn't look as good as it did on the paper, and you can keep exploring. But if it's not working right away, then I would just abandon the idea. So if I see it's working, what I would then do is copy that, develop it further, copy it again and just keep reworking it, seeing if there's ways that I can simplify it in some way. So, for example, I've worked on a logo before where it had the original idea had like a number of. It had a shape within a shape, and I remember simplifying it down. I reduced it to less components, so it involved just taking the whole outer shape out because it didn't need to be there. So if you find that something doesn't need to be there, find a way to take it out so that you're working with the minimum of means showing the maximum message, and that's quite hard to do. But like I said, if you keep copying and improving and seeing what you can take away, then with time you can get to that. I usually like to choose a typeface first. So I tend to use Adobe fonts as my kind of go-to place. If you are subscribed to the Adobe products, that's free. So you can just go on their website, you type in the name of the company. So I usually do it in like lowercase and capitals just for comparison, and then I'll just search. Sometimes I'll go through the whole lot. It can take like an hour or two, but I like to see how everything looks. And then in my sketchbook, I'll write down every font I feel has the right sort of look and feel. I'll activate them. And then in Illustrator, I'll put the company name and put it in all of the fonts I listed. And then I'll narrow those down to a handful. And then, it's a case of, say if there's a symbol and a word mark, I'll find what I feel is the most effective typeface. I'll expand it to outlines. I'll modify it if needed. And then when I create the symbol, what I'll try to do is I'll create it so it has similar aesthetics to the typeface. What I see a lot of designers do is they create the icon first, and then they try and find a typeface that pairs with it. But I like to do it the other way around. So I'll find the typeface first that has the right look and feel, and then I'll create a symbol to go with it that mirrors the word mark in some way. Sometimes I do create the symbol first, but then what I would do is I'll modify it if needed so it pairs nicely with the typeface. I think that's important because you want to make sure that you've got that continuity across the whole thing, so you can it looks like one consistent component rather than like a symbol with a word mark just slapped onto it. And then what I would do once I've got between like 2 and 4 really strong ideas, what I'll then do is I'll put together a presentation document. And rather than just showing like 3 logos on a page and going to my client, like, ta-da, here's 3 logos. What I'll do is I like to present each one individually. So usually, if you can imagine when I do my slides, it's like I'll have a front cover. Next page would be like option 1. Next page might just be the logo on its own in the middle of the screen. And in the bottom right-hand corner, I like to do a really tiny version of it in black and white. And that allows me to talk about that one logo on its own, and the client can focus on that one direction. But if you was to show like 3, you'll be jumping between them, and the client is probably not focusing on what you're talking about because they'll be looking at the other ideas. So it makes sure that you're focused, client's focused, and everything like that. And then I like to show that same logo, maybe inverted, maybe different configurations. So if there was a symbol, first version might have the symbol to the left. Another lockup or configuration would have the symbol above. And then I like to show how that could look in real life use. So I like to use a website called Placeit, and also combined with an application called Live Surface. And those are tools, there's a lot of them out there now, but those are tools that allow you to quickly mock up how your logo could look in the real world. So for example, I like to show a range of sizes. So first image might be at an exhibition, really big on like a trade show stand. Next one might be on, say, a t-shirt, for example, and then the next one will be like a nice small example. So I worked with a client recently that I knew that their product was going to be used as an app, so I mocked it up on a mobile phone as an app so they could see how it could look in real use. And just doing that, you can make it really clear to the client that it's really important that logo is very versatile. And you can show them it looks fantastic at large sizes and it works really well at small sizes too. And I also try to make those images appropriate to their industry. So if you know that they are like something to do with swimming, maybe you can find images that have water in some way. Or if you know that they're fairly corporate, then make sure that you use like stationery and stuff like that. Hopefully you kind of get the idea. Just make those images so that your client can picture how it will look. So I do that same thing for each logo I present. Sometimes I present one, usually I present 3, sometimes I present 4. And then the very last slide, I show all of the options. And then what I do, once I finish that document, so I usually do it in InDesign, I'll export out a PDF. And then I use a product called Loom, which allows you to record your screen. And I'll get my mic and everything all set up. I'll write down a few notes just before I start speaking through it. And then I will literally present my logos by recording my screen. I'll talk through each of the logos. At the end of the presentation, I'll do a summary. If I feel quite strongly about one particular direction, I'll say something like, if this was entirely down to me, based on everything that we've spoken about, all the goals, I would go with this one because of X, Y, and Z. And that usually works. So I send that over. Loom is fantastic because when you finish the recording, it just uploads it directly to the website. And if you pay, you can like white label it so you can have your logo in the left-hand corner, sorry. So copy that link, and then I'll send my client an email, letting them know, I'm really happy to let you know that I've completed the initial design phase. I've recorded a video for you. Here's a link. If you'd like to take a closer look at the document in the video, here's a link to preview that. But because I haven't included notes in the presentation, please can you watch the video before downloading this? Kind regards, blah, 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 some kind of email. And then what can happen after that is a number of things. Sometimes clients go, I absolutely love it. Can we go ahead with this? And then what I like to do is just continue to develop it a little bit further, like just fine tune the kerning, polish up the symbol, and just make it as perfect as it can be. If I've made quite big changes, I just run it by the client first. If it's unnoticeable, I'll just move ahead and prepare the files. Sometimes the client can come back and say, I love this bit, I love this. And then what I'll do is I'll put another couple of options together. But yeah, the usual thing is they'll eventually sign it off, and then I prepare a kit of files for web and print. Again, I use another product called Logo Package Express. Can I add an affiliate link?
Yeah, I was going to say.
So I've got an affiliate link for that called logogeek.uk/extension. And if you use promo code LogoGeek, you can get 20% off it. That's a fantastic product. It speeds up that whole process. So that I used to do all of that manually. It used to take like an hour at least. If there was lots of different configurations, creating that kit could take a couple of hours. With Logo Package Express, you can do it in... I like to edit the folders. So you could technically, like, if you just leave it as it is, you can do all that export in like 10 minutes. But with the edits and tidying up that I do, and changes, it's like half an hour max. It's really fast. I can also create a little document just explaining what the files are for, package that up. I got a folder on Dropbox where I put the client's files. I let the client know that it's all ready to send over. I'll send the final invoice. Once that's then paid, I'll send them a link to the Dropbox so they can download it. But that's pretty much... hopefully I didn't ramble on for too long, but that's pretty much the process in a nutshell. If you do want me to go into any more detail on anything specific, just shout. But that's generally how I work.
I asked you that because I know that the majority of people that listen to this are students, and I wanted to kind of get your insight as somebody that's in industry, and I think you've done exactly that there. There are a couple of things in there that I mentioned that I think are really important. Like you mentioned, just making duplicates as you are making the logo. Like I think that needs to be nailed into everyone at this point. It's like Aaron Draplin
I like
doesn't. Same lines.
Yeah. Draplin says vectors are free. You was going to say something different.
No, it's just Well, he says I've heard him say just keep it live, as in like constantly don't rasterize it. Just make sure as you're going along, just making a duplicate every now and again, just to make sure you can go back to each one. And I think that's like rule number one in logo design.
Yeah. What I like to do, Draplin is quite tidy, so we're copying and keep them all nicely organized. But what I like to do is you have your artboard, and then the surrounding area, I see it as like a dumping ground. So say if I picked out a font, just before I outline it, I threw it to the side. It can be like an absolute mess sometimes, but it doesn't matter. It's like your desk. Just work however you want. The most important thing is that the final logo is nice and clean and polished. But how you work, like I was saying, Draplin says vectors are free. So just copy things, throw it over. Just before you expand everything, make sure that you take a copy so you can reference back to it at a later date. But yeah, just do whatever you need to do.
And the other thing as well was you mentioned the mock-ups, and I think those are really important because I think when you are presenting to a client, they may not have sort of the same appreciation for logos that we do, so they want to see it as they want to see it in use, don't they, more than they do just being a pretty logo a lot of the time.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's funny because I think as designers, we can picture how everything can look, and we can see the like a future possibility that doesn't exist. But the average person, I found through my career, just doesn't see it. They have no. Some people do, but the average person just doesn't have that capability to visualize how it could look. So mocking it up in use, and like I said, make sure it's industry relevant. So if they are fairly corporate, business cards, stationery. But if for example, that they're going to have a store and they're going to have like bags and products and boxes and all that sort of stuff, just mock it up. Just show them how it could look. And that gets them all excited about it. And I've actually known some designers to go all out and actually make an actual thing. The only thing with that is I think it's quite a risk, and I think if you're going to do that, you need to be charging quite a lot of money, because if you're going to be going out there getting like, I guess something like a t-shirt is probably going to be like 20 quid, but if you've only charged like £100, which some students might be at the beginning, that's like 20% of your entire profit gone. Mocking that up. So I think if you're going to do that, you have to be really confident that what you've done is the right thing, but also have the budget for it.
I think what I'd say to that is, I don't think you need to. I think there's enough 3D programs out there. There's like Adobe Dimension. You only need to know sort of a passing knowledge of Adobe Dimension to put a logo onto really anything in that. And I think there's enough 3D programs out there that don't have a really steep learning curve that you can just put it on anything, can't you? Basically, a beer bottle, a wine bottle. I know. You mentioned t-shirts. I've been working on a piece of software recently called Clo 3D, which is it's what industry use, but you can get like really realistic like mock-ups of clothing in that, and you can just put a logo on that, simple as, and you can make it so it looks like it's actually been screen printed on it and everything like that. So I'd say don't give people actual products, just mock it up and then do it from there.
Yeah. So you can get like Photoshop templates that are created. You can create your own. There's endless ways of doing that. But if you're going to present a logo, present it in use. When you compare just showing like a logo on a white background, nobody can really visualize it. And sometimes a logo needs to be really simple. And in all honesty, when you see it just on a white background, it can be quite underwhelming. Like if you imagine some of the most famous logos out there, if you isolate them on a white background, they're quite boring, quite uninspiring. But when you show them the possibilities of how you can use it and how it can look, then it's way more impressive. And Pentagram do that very well, because Pentagram is one of those examples where a lot of the corporate identity work, so from the likes of like Michael Beirut and Paul Scher, a lot of their stuff is sometimes just like Helvetica slightly tweaked with like a line or some element, but they really nail that aesthetic and get it all perfect. But what really sells it is all of the mocked up images, and it really helps to capture how that identity can look in the real world. So definitely present using mock-ups however you want to, whether you use Placeit, Live Surface, PSD, mock-ups, create your own. I see nothing wrong with creating your own physical products, but like I said, if you're going to do that, make sure you have the budget in there for it.
Just to kind of bring it back a little bit, and I know we've been going for ages now, but just to kind of, this was one of the things that I wanted to be kind of the crux of the podcast. So you mentioned as to what a logo is, you mentioned like a branding tool and kind of used to attracting clients. And to kind of give you a bit of background on this, logos to me personally, they exist in this kind of weird juxtaposed kind of universe in my head. So on one side of things, I think that when they're done really well, like a Nike or an Apple, they're almost like a work of art, so to speak. And they can have this kind of really polarizing, almost like biblical effect on people, where if you look at like clothing brands, people will pay, obscene amounts of money to have a piece of clothing with like a Supreme logo on and things like that. On one side of my brain, that exists. And then on the other side, it kind of exists as sort of, but while that all exists, they're ultimately pointless in a weird way, because to kind of quote Michael Beirut, he mentions how it's kind of just like logos at their core are kind of just a vessel that you put ideas into, aren't they? So no matter what, so for just an example, personally, I think Apple would be Apple if their logo wasn't an apple. They'd still be worth $1 trillion and things like that. So I have these kind of competing ideas in my head that won't really sit with each other, so to speak. So I wanted to kind of ask you personally, where do you kind of, what is a logo to you? What is it used for? What do you create one for?
Okay, so priority number one is to identify. So there's a lot of companies out there, and along with a brand identity, which includes a whole load of things, it should assist with identification. So someone should be able to recognize your company based on what the logo looks like, in the same way that you would recognize a person by looking at their face. In terms of what you mentioned about Michael Beirut, when you create a logo, it isn't a logo yet. It's just an image.
It's like an empty, it's like a cardboard box, isn't it?
It's like an empty cardboard box or an empty vessel, as Michael Beirut references. And it's through that use it connects everything to it. So when you ask a lot of graphic designers what their favorite logos are, usually their go-to responses are things like Nike, Apple, and so on. Not because their logos are particularly special. I mean, at the end of the day, the Nike swoosh is just a tick. There's nothing that special about it, but it's because of everything connected to it. And the best example to describe what I mean by this, look at the swastika. That is a nicely designed logo, but it has so much negativity attached to it through use. Like originally it was associated to peace, but the Nazis flipped it, turned it into this evil thing, used it through war, and there's people now that use it in like white supremacy and all that sort of stuff. So no one would say my favorite logo is the swastika because it's just got all this negativity attached to it, and that I find that one of the best ways of describing how a logo is an empty vessel, because it's just basically a few lines. But and the same with like the cross in Christianity, that is just two lines placed over the top of each other, and prior to it being used in that instance, it was meaningless. And it's through that combination that it becomes more than just a symbol. So like I said, from day one, it's a symbol, and you want to make sure that it differentiates from what's out there so that it's identifiable. But long-term through use, it absorbs, because it's the single thing that identifies the company. And if there was one piece of visual, like if there was one visual element that was going to be used to represent a company, or like a company is full of products, people, buildings, processes, systems, all that sort of stuff. If there was going to be one thing at the top of that pile, it would be the logo. So, yes, in the grand scheme of things, it is a very tiny like cherry on the top of the cake, but that cherry on the top of the cake needs to be a damn good cherry for the because it is the face of the company, and you kind of need to see it like a flag. So flags basically don't really have any meaning, but when you see a flag, say if it's just three colors or whatever, because of the association with that and all the semiotics and everything attached to that thing, it has so much more power and influence than anything else. So hopefully that makes sense.
Again, to take it back a bit, you did touch very briefly at the beginning on kind of AI and things like that. So I wanted to kind of ask you, do you think that the sort of thing that we do in terms of logos, because they're almost a very abstract form that I guess in the beginning don't actually have any meaning or feeling in them, could a computer just do that as opposed to a human doing it? Even at kind of the top, even at kind of, the Google end of the Google, Nike, Apple end of things, as opposed to like the Fiverr level, could the Fiverr level become the Apple level, so to speak?
Yeah. So, The answer is yes. Providing somebody can write an algorithm that can work out all these parameters, then yes, definitely. I mean, I can think in my head how you can program that, and there are companies out there doing that. Where I see it not working is that if you're a business owner and you're really proud of your business, do you really want to have a logo that was generated by a machine? Most people wouldn't want that, even if the technology was there. And it's inevitable that the technology will be there, 100% guaranteed. It's nearly there now. Give it 10 years. Computer systems will probably design better logos than either of us, which is absolutely terrifying, but definitely going to happen whether people like it or not, and you have to start accepting that. But like I said, if you are a company owner and you're really proud about your business, you're not going to want an AI system creating it. You're going to be proud that you went to a human being, you paid a human being and created a masterpiece. And companies, I think they pay a real person even more money because they value it more than ever, because there's going to be a lot of small companies or people that just don't want to spend any money. Those people are out there now. They're using the Fivers of the world and the crowdsourcing sites. All of those companies are going to be wiped out by AI because they're just going to do a better job than Fiverr or 99 Designs or anything like that. They just wipe them all out. And I feel sorry for the people that are designing $5 logos because they're not going to be doing that for too much longer with these systems that are being built. But people like us that study it properly and work hard to create a really good process system, work hard on the client relationships, that will become even more valuable than it ever has. I hope we're going to be in a good place to get clients that want to work with human beings and have an identity that has some kind of soul and story attached to it.
Mm-hmm. I think what I've pulled from what you just said there is in a kind of way. So at the moment, I think I see it as like if you were to get a computer to design a logo with the software that's out there right now, it can be quite bland and a bit crap, really. And as opposed to getting a human to do it, it'll kind of be a little bit more. I guess refined and pristine, and I guess that technology that automates it gets better and better and better, almost past the human level.
It will
to get
definitely
to even better. So then it'll get to a point where we'll have to pivot ourselves to I guess not offer the most pristine logo, but you'd have like a human touch. You could be able to tell the difference between an AI generated logo, which is like untouchable, against a human one, which kind of has that more of an emotional feel to it. So I guess things will pivot, I guess, at a point. So they'll pass us, and then we'll have to say, we've got to go in a different direction with this, maybe.
Yeah. I think in terms of the final product, it's inevitable that machines will eventually be able to replicate and improve anything that we ever create. That's inevitable. Where it's more challenging is imagination. Imagination is almost impossible to code, and that won't get taken over. So it's quite likely that within the next 100 years, in our lifetime, there will probably be very good technology that would be able to create very good logos that probably solve the brief very well, but might be, just not really out of the box because you're not able.
Yeah, I think they'd be, personally, I'd say they'd probably be too pristine, if that makes sense. They'd be too clinical almost. They wouldn't have a human touch. You'd be able to kind of feel it, I think.
Yeah, but what we could bring to the table is more of the strategy and the deeper thinking and the direction for how they could take their company. And eventually we might even start using these systems where we just use that to help us design more ideas and create more ideas. So it could actually help us to, like, you know how sometimes we sit down and we generate like 200 like sketched out 200 logos. There might eventually be a system where you enter in your initial thoughts. For example, you might be thinking of ideas of how you can create a symbol that combines like space and housing property, and there might eventually be these AI systems where you enter in a few words and it just mocks out a load of ideas for you. And, we could help the AI find the right solution. We could guide it on its path. But then there's going to be somebody that will come along and will, use machine learning to learn how human beings are interacting with the system. You see where I'm going with this? Literally, give it a few hundred years, systems out there will be able to do everything that we do, but better. And I know that's terrifying, but that's inevitable. And yes, that will be possible. But like I said, clients will want the luxury of working with a human being, and they'll be proud to tell their customers, we worked with such and such, they created this. And I think people will pay a premium for that. But it's inevitable that AI systems and they're just going to become as intelligent as human beings within a very short period of time, because there's already Google invested a lot into different companies. One of them was I can't remember what the company was called, but I think they used that company to develop RankBrain, which is one of the algorithms that they use through search, and that actually learns on its own. It will teach itself. It teaches itself. So yeah, it's going to happen. It will happen in everything, but like you see with supermarkets, in supermarkets you can actually completely remove human beings, because you can create machines that will stack the shelves, you can create machines that replicate the checkout process, but you have these people of a certain generation that just won't accept that, and they don't want that there. And I think that that need for having the human beings there is important, and I think people will kind of go against it and want human beings to do stuff, because they're really against all this machine stuff. And now this is really sounding like a science fiction film going terribly wrong.
It's very Black Mirror.
It's going to happen. It will. I guarantee you.
Oh, no, definitely.
Maybe even less than that. Give it 20 years. There will be these AI systems that will completely wipe out all of the cheap, crappy design services that just knock stuff out. Guaranteed.
I think, in a way, from what I've kind of gleaned from that is, do you know how we have sort of at the moment, like we have like fair trade and stuff like that, and kind of you have organically grown stuff. It would be kind of like that, but in the sense of like you'd have
human made.
Yeah, you'd have human, like a label which says human made on it, won't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And people will want that because they'll want to support their friends and family and neighbors, and people will fight against it. It's going to happen. But
it's good to know. It's good to know, I guess, now that there are people that do the sort of, there are people out there now which are doing things to save the planet. So in the same sort of brainwave in the future, when everything's run by AI, there will most likely be people out there fighting the cause to say, no, I want something which is designed by a human, just by principle more than anything.
Yeah, definitely. But like I was saying earlier, I think that the most valuable technology and the most valuable use of AI is as an enhancement to us. So we are now speaking through something that didn't exist like 50 years ago. The internet just didn't exist. We're using computers that are allowing us to communicate and make our life easier. Hopefully AI will come on board and make that brainstorming process a lot easier, or whatever. So it could go in any direction, really. It all depends where all the money's, where the money goes.
So begin rounding things off. One thing that I ask everyone on this is if you could, a couple of questions, and I'll hit you in like rapid fire with them, I guess. First of all, do you have any advice you'd give to sort of someone that's just graduated now and going into industry, knowing what you do? And also, as a second kind of question, as a caveat on top of that, if you could go back in time and ask yourself and give yourself a piece of advice when you graduated, what would that be? So something that you tell someone now and something that you tell yourself.
I think one of the most important things is to only show the kind of work you would like to do. So irrelevant of whether you did that work for some big company or whatever, if it's not the type of work you want to do, take it out your portfolio. And I know it's boring, but that's actually the advice that I would give myself. And I hope you don't mind me. I'll tell you a quick story. So
no, that's fine. You can do both at once.
I can't remember how long ago it was, but a whole load of years ago, I decided that I wanted to leave the company that I was working for, where I was a web designer, and I wanted to go and work for this graphic design agency in London that did loads of really cool print-based work. And that whole idea really excited me. So what I did is I prepared my portfolio. I put together all the best work that I did at that agency that was all web-based. I went in there for my interview, and the woman got really excited about my work and said, "Oh, we've actually been thinking of doing more of this kind of work, web-based work, because it's not something that we really got into." And like my heart sunk, because I'm thinking, no, I don't want to be doing that kind of work. I want to be doing this type of thing that I've seen in your portfolio. So the lesson in that is, when you go to a company and you see that they do lots of print-based work, prepare some of that print-based work to show them. Because say if you want to get logos as if you want customers to come to you for a logo, only show logos on your website or in your portfolio. Or if you want web design only, just show web design. Don't try and show that you can do absolutely everything if one of those things is just something that you don't want to do. So advice to old me would be, prior to going to those interviews, to pull out all the brochures that I did. And if I didn't have any really good ones, to spend my evenings designing some really strong brochures so that I can go in there, show off, show my best work, just remove all of the web design stuff and just show basically what they would want to see. So yeah, show the kind of work that you would like to attract, and get rid of everything else.
No, that's fair. I think to kind of elaborate on something that you touched on then as well, you mentioned just having not all work. I've just wrote down, not all work has to be client work. So, you can have a mock-up of a logo which doesn't actually exist in your portfolio if you want to pad things out, and if it's some of the best work. Personally, I've got this thing of, I think the best work you'll ever do is some of the work which isn't for anyone. It's just something you've done for yourself. Personally, I've always believed that. And you can put things in your portfolio which isn't client work. You can make things up and you can put them in just to showcase your work.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. So if you know that you would like say if you decided that you want that you would really like to do like alcohol packaging, don't expect people to come to you for alcohol packaging design if all you got in your portfolio is websites. You need to sit down and spend time redesigning some alcohol packaging, some beer labels or wine labels or that type of thing. And create the most amazing portfolio piece that you can possibly create and put it out there into the world. Because by doing that, people can see, oh, I really want something like that. I can see that you can do it. And if you do that, whatever you want to do, if you do that, then you'll get loads of clients, because that's all you need to do, really. It's just consistently show the kind of work that you want to attract.
I think as well, as we mentioned before, on when you're doing the mock-ups and things like that with a logo, there's pretty much no difference between the way you'd mock up an actual logo and something that you've made up anyway, is there, realistically? If you wanted to mock it up on a t-shirt, you'd just pick a mock-up, wouldn't you? Regardless of if you've made the logo from scratch or if it is for a client. They're one and the same, aren't they, realistically? So it's somebody that's looking at your portfolio of work. If you've got, like personally on mine, I've got ones which are actual client work on, and they're just stuff that I've made up for companies. But I don't think most people won't be able to tell the difference between one and the other unless you state that they are different to each other.
Yeah, but I say that I've also had calls with clients that have questioned, like they've said, I've looked into this company and I'm not able to find any information on it.
Oh.
And in those cases in my portfolio, they were actually real clients. It's just their business failed and it doesn't exist anymore. But
I
suppose
like that's different though. That is a real company, isn't it? They've just gone under.
Yeah. I did the actual work. I'm really proud of it. But there are some only one person. I spoke to one person that had a real issue with looking at designers' portfolio and it not being a real thing. But yeah, it goes back to what I said. You're not going to get the kind of work that you want unless you show it. And that could mean reaching out to companies and offer your services for free so that you have that client involved and you can get a good testimonial, or you can just make one up, and start something. But I think even if you make it up, I think you should still create a brief for yourself and you should still have parameters. Otherwise, you're just making it up as you go along, and I don't think it's going to help you much doing.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a detriment, that can't
yeah,
it?
Exactly. Yeah.
No, that's pretty much it then. Do you want to plug your socials and things?
Yeah, so I'm basically Logo Geek on everything now. It's all consistent. So my website is logogeek.uk. If you go to logogeek.com, it redirects. I'm most active on Twitter and on Facebook. So I have a really good Facebook community, and you can find out by going to logogeek.uk/community. I think it's one of the best graphic design communities out there, because all the people in there are just so incredible. Everybody is there to help each other, and I know I set it up originally, but really it's not about me. It's everybody working together, and I'm really proud that I started that.
I rarely see you even posting it now.
No, I rarely post. I just moderate it. I keep it rolling. But yeah, I think it's a fantastic group for Lego designers.
I moderate a couple of groups on Facebook that are they've got over 1 million people in it, and I can tell you firsthand, the content that's in Logo Geek is far 10 times, 100 times better than in the groups that are
you have to really moderate that from you. I think there's a culture attached to communities, and you have to create that culture from the very beginning, and you have to set the expectations of what's required and nurture that from the beginning. So I still do all that nurturing, I still do all that pruning. If someone's not right for the group, then they don't get in. But yeah, there's a lot of moderation that happens. So even though I haven't been active lately just because we've been moving. There's been a lot going on. But I'm always there in some way, whether it's just a fly on the wall.
Hello again. It is just me. Oh, did it in a bit of a different tone this time, didn't I? I hope you enjoyed that. Again, sorry it was super duper long. But yeah, hopefully there's a lot you can take from that if you are sort of a student or a recent graduate, in terms of your process when you're sort of approaching designing a logo for someone. And also it might have shifted your sort of idea as to what a logo is, which happened to me sort of last year, because I always saw logos as sort of this shining beacon of a brand that sort of holds all of the brand values. And a lot of the time it isn't necessarily that. It's sort of something that we kind of touched on, but it's sort of like an abstract painting. It's sort of all under the eye of the customer, so to speak, as it is, as opposed to the company dictating what you see in a logo. You oftentimes attach sort of your own feelings and emotions towards a brand to a logo, as opposed to them dictating how you see a logo. So the ideas might have been flipped as opposed to what it normally is for you. Yeah, anyway, I'll shut up. If you want to connect with me online, I am at Priority Material on Instagram. I think I'm Pirated Material on Twitter too. Let me just double check. Yep, I am Pirated Material on Twitter too. Pirated Material on TikTok, even though I haven't posted there in a while. I might do eventually, I don't know. I might start Twitch, maybe. Is that a good idea? Let me know somewhere. That would be fantastic. And yeah, my website is prioritymaterial.co.uk. Although that is just a portfolio. So I haven't really explained that. Yeah, my website's just a portfolio, so I don't really know why you'd go there unless you want to look at my work, which is fine if you want to go look at my work, Again, I'll shut up. Anyway, thank you for listening. I shall see you next time.